So last week, I'm not even going to use a chair because I've been sitting all worship. I'm good. Last week, I spoke to you guys about the 7 Hebrew words for praise. And it's just really important that we understand that the Lord is, that the way we worship is not new, right? It's not a denomination thing. It's not a non-denominational thing. It's not a charismatic thing or a Pentecostal thing. The way we worship is biblical. It's literally how the Israelites and David and the priests communed with the Lord. And when in the book of Revelation where it says, I have made you a kingdom of priests, the priest's job was to worship the Lord for the people. And so when Jesus makes us priests, a priestly people, that means our number one call our number one call and our number one goal in life really is to worship. So when you're like at our services and you're like, man, they worship for such a long time, it's because we're in the butter lane. We're in the exact spot we're supposed to be in. This is exactly where we're supposed to be. In David, last week, if you want to listen to it, you definitely should. It's on our podcast. But David really, he was like, I don't want these priests to do the worshiping for me. I want to worship, even though he wasn't a Levite. He was the king, but he was a kingly priest, just like our Savior Jesus, who is a king and he is a priest at the same time. And so it's just important we understand what worship is, the Hebrew words behind it. So basically what I did is I went through, there's 7 really common Hebrew words for praise and for thanksgiving in the book of the Bible, mainly in Psalms. That's where you find a lot of these words, but it's actually all throughout. But Psalms is where we see it because it's a book of worship. So the first one we went through last week was halal. The word is halal. There we go. It means to be clear, to shine, to boast in, to shout with joy and terror in worship, to cry aloud, glorifying, or to make one's boast in, to give in marriage, praise, rage foolishly, and to celebrate. So I love that rage word. It was just like, I said last week, it's like going to a good rager. That party was a rager. You know what I mean? It's like we see this when David is bringing the ark into Israel. He's raging, and it says he's dancing with all of his might. He was giving the Lord his halal. So in our language, it says he praised the Lord. That word is he halaled the Lord, which meant he was shouting with joy, terror. You know what I mean? Like sometimes I feel like when I worship, people look at me and they're like, that dude's bipolar. Because I could go from like, you know what I mean? Like, because it's like I'm willing to give him every emotion that wants to bubble up, And I feel like David was that way where he was just like giving every bit of joy, every bit of shout, every bit of dancing and rage, and he's just like and they translate it in English, he danced with all his might, but there was a lot happening. The second word was yada, and this is actually the way that we see worship really frequently in almost every church, I would say, in America. Most every church this is yada. I give the Lord my yada, which is my open hands, a posture of surrender. It's to throw or to cast, to hold up, physically hold out hands, especially to revere and worship. We see this literally around the throne. It's literally happening right now. The 24 elders are yadaing the Lord by casting their crowns. That's their yada. We saw it with Jehoshaphat as he led. I walked through that about how Jehoshaphat walked into a battle with no army other than just worship leaders walking towards these armies, worshiping the Lord with their hands yadaing the Lord, and they won the victory from their yada praise. It's amazing. Yep. Okay, so now the third word is tauda, which is right up there. It's adoration. It's a choir of worshipers giving thanks to give an expression of the character or acts of someone. Thanksgiving for things not yet received. So this is like when you give your tauda to the Lord. Like, like I said, all these words, we would just say in English, praise, thanksgiving, worship. But they had words that meant specific things. So their tauda was thanking the Lord in advance. Lord, I thank you. You have given us the victory, even though I don't see the victory before me. Lord, I thank you that you're, an example is when our daughter Scarlett had a seizure. She had a seizure in my arms. She starts shaking. She turned blue. She's not breathing. And my first instinct was, Lord, thank you that you're with my daughter right now, that you're here. And that was the only thing that could come out was, Lord, you're here. Thank you that you're here. And she's shaking and not breathing. And Lydia's calling 911. But I'm like, there's nothing else I can do other than thank you, Lord, that you are here and you're holding my baby. That was me giving the Lord my tauda. It was like, I've got nothing other than to thank you for the advance. Thank you in advance for what you're going to do for my daughter. Man, that's like battle stuff. That's like shing, like, you're pulling out your swords in the middle of a battle. When a battle hits you, you're just ready and willing to do it. I think sometimes we think, well, I don't want to get my hopes up. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that because I don't want to feel let down at the end. It's like, no, dude, draw your sword. Worship him in the middle of the battle and then you'll win. That's a good word, Ethan. Thank you. So we're going to go through the next 4 words today, and I have Lydia up here, my beautiful bride, with me with a microphone just to jump in when she wants to, and it's going to be good. But one of the things I was just thinking about this week, and I had this perfect picture, was why is how we worship so important? And I was walking from my house to our barn, and for those of you who have been to our house, we have a chicken coop that's like kind of in between. And we have kind of like 2 different flocks of chickens at our house, where like we have our adult chickens, and then we have our you would like late teens. I don't know. It's like you have your juvenile chickens that look like adults, but they ain't adults. And so I'm walking and I see out of the coop door, all of our adult chickens are all out there. And then I see one of our chickens, that's like one of the juvenile chickens, she sticks her head out and the sun is like right there. And she's just sticking her head out, just trying to like take in the sunlight because she's too scared to go into the chicken run. And the Lord was like, that's what life without worship looks like. A life not being willing to be yielded to worship. And I was like, what does that even mean? And he was like, when you're not willing to worship me in every way that I might ask you to, it's like sticking your head in the sun, but the rest of your body is missing the sunlight. And it's like, in order to step into the glorious just light of his presence, the light of his countenance, it's like, I don't know how to explain this, but it's like this chicken's so terrified of her interactions with the other chickens that she just sticks her head out. And just, that's how she's getting her vitamin D for the day. It's just stick her little head out. And she will never, ever go out. She doesn't go out. She just does that. And I think about that all the time when I see Christians who are like, they're like terrified to lift their hands or terrified to shout, to dance, to rejoice, whatever it is. And it's like, you're just, it's like you're right there. If you just take one step, you're in it. You're in it. And so often it's just us, like we're tripping over ourselves. We're like, yes, Lord, And you want to add something to that?
Yeah. So our chickens, they're terrified of the other chickens because the other chickens were not so nice when they were smaller. But I think too, that's like the perfect picture for the chicken yard being this example of all that God has available to you. Like that chicken will never experience fresh grubs. She will only ever eat chicken food from inside because she won't go outside because she's terrified of all of the other chickens. But how often is it that we're one of 2 things. We're terrified of what people are going to think of us because God forbid we raise our hands. We just let loose and give him everything he's worthy of to be ridiculed later, or we've experienced pain from people and now we associate the presence with people that we were offended with. And so this chicken is forever in this spot that she is getting a fraction of what she could be getting because she's terrified of the experience that she had with other people in that environment, with other chickens in that environment. And that's kind of what Ethan went into during worship, even just saying like, the Lord is freeing us from being jaded. Mm-hmm. The Lord is freeing us from hearing songs that trigger us from past experiences and saying that song doesn't belong to them, that song belongs to me. Mm-hmm. The Lord is freeing us from being offended. Like, let's say we've been in a charismatic movement before and we got hurt there. And so now we just want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. That chicken wants to just throw out the outdoors and just never go out. What's in the coop is enough. She can be sustained in the coop. It's fine, but she's going to live a miserable life compared to what she could have if she would step out and trust that the Lord is her strength and he's her shield and he'll protect her. I mean, I hope that God protects my chickens.
Yeah.
But it's so often that our worship gets minimized because we're either afraid of being persecuted and ridiculed, or we've seen it somewhere else in a hypocritical manner, and so we want no part of it. Mm-hmm. And the Lord wants to take that back for you and remind you that like it belongs to him. Yeah. Every bit of it, every form of worship and praise that we can give to the Lord is his. And he already died at the cross, put his blood all over all the offense to where it doesn't need to be something that we hold on to. Mm-hmm. So
I wrote down this, worship is a lot like this chicken. You don't have to worship to get God. You worship to commune with him. Does that make sense? We don't worship to get him. We worship to commune with him. Yeah. And so like if he's right here and we're like, it's like, he just be with him, stand in the glory of who he is, be in his presence. And I think too often, like we've taught people, just worship the way you worship how you want to worship. And that's fine. Cause there is totally an aspect of us coming before the Lord as an individual and saying, Lord, what do you want from me? What are you requiring of me today? That's completely true. However, if the Lord says, I want to dance today, I want to shout today, you know what I mean? It's what he wants. It's not what we want. And I think like, are we open to allowing him to ask us to do something that may make us uncomfortable? Because too often we think like, well, he would never ask me to do something that makes me uncomfortable. Like tell that to 12 disciples, 11 of which died a martyr's death. So, or maybe 12. We don't know yet. We'll find out in heaven. Johnny boy. Okay. Anybody got that one? No? Okay, cool. That was where like Jesus tells Peter, you're going to die a martyr's death. And he's like, what about him? And John's like, he's like, it doesn't matter about John. Focus on yourself, Peter. So we don't really know if John died of martyr's death or not. Okay. Thank you for that preface. But we just need to, we need to understand worship is not just something we do. It's an experience with him. It is us communing with him. I think like Upper Room, they say at Upper Room, worship is us finding out about who God is. And the only way you find that out is not through just singing a song. It's through talking to him. It's through just communing with him, telling him about who he is. And then in return, he'll tell us about who we are. And it all comes from that heart of like, Lord, it's you, it's you, it's you. It's not about me. It's not about what I feel today. It's not about whether I get goosebumps and feel like, oh, he's here. It's like, no, I decided in my heart he is here. And so my worship will come from that decision. That decision that didn't come from, do I feel it or not? It came from, I decided you are worthy. Yeah?
Hold on.
Yeah.
And then with that, so if we're like being willing to like let the Lord tell us what he wants that day, and if you're feeling like, I just don't know what you want today. I don't know what it is. I think the best thing that you can always remember to do is something that Bill Johnson talks about, which is honoring the point. So he gives this example of how with hunting dogs, when one dog catches the scent of the animal that was shot, the other dog turns to that dog and points to it. And then they go after what that dog got. So when you are like walking into an environment and we're all worshiping and you're like, I don't know what he wants from me today, and you see somebody else who clearly is like communing with the Lord, and maybe they're dancing, maybe they're kneeling, whatever, like you honor the point and you follow in line with what you see happening, because there's breakthrough there. And I mean, that is why we gather together. Like when the Bible talks about us, like not forsaking coming together so that we can edify each other and encourage each other and experience him together. There is fruit that you can gain from somebody next to you that may be reaching him in a way that you feel blocked from. You feel like you can't. So that's like just an example.
Yeah, it's important when it's like that the one dog didn't catch the scent, so he's like, that dog did. Whoop. Yeah. You know. Okay, so we have the first word was halal last week. Second word was yada. Third word is tauda. Now fourth word is shabak, which means to shabak. Thank you, Bear. Shabak, which means to address with a loud voice or to shout. Okay. This is a form of praise. So like when people start shouting, yes, Jesus, let's go. You know what I mean? Like, we worship you. You are worthy. And they're shouting. Just because it makes you uncomfortable doesn't mean it's not worship, right? You know, sometimes if you're standing next to somebody who will shout, you know, you're like, oh, wow, let's go. You know, out of the boat. Yeah. But that is them giving the Lord their shabak. It's not just zeal. It's not just excitement. It's a form of praise. Okay, so Psalms 145:4. This is an example of shabak. One generation shall praise. That praise word is the Hebrew word shabak. Your works to another, and shall declare your mighty acts. One generation shall praise your works to another, and shall declare your mighty acts. I love this song because I felt like I read it this week and I saw it from a totally different perspective. If I'm one generation, let's say I'm a millennial and Lydia's a Gen Z, I'm shouting to the other generation the good things of the Lord. Like, he did this for me, set me free. Like he whatever it is, he healed my he healed my marriage. He set me free from addictions. He whatever your testimony is. And it's like this is them giving their Lord, it's a form of worship. They're giving the Lord their shabak, but they're actually saying one generation is shouting to the other their worship to the Lord, which it reminds me of a story that Nate tells, which I'll let him tell one day, but like or you could tell it right now, I don't know. But there was a moment he went to church and there was somebody with him that was like a family member or friend or whatever. And he was like, oh, this is weird. I'm going to like worship, and I've never worshiped in front of this person before. And the Lord was like, worship for you, like worship for me, and your worship will cause him to see rightly. And I feel like that's like this example of like they're giving the Lord their shout, their shabak, and it leads somebody else and almost pulls them into the wake of what you're doing. Yeah. Does that make sense? And that's kind of like what they're talking about in Psalms 145. Psalm 47:1. Oh, clap you hands, all you people. Shout to God with the voice of triumph. That shout word is the same word. It is shabak to the Lord. Yeah? Mm-hmm. Can anybody want to shout at me right now? Bear, you want to shout? Okay. What? He's taking diligent notes. Okay, so that is shabak. Okay, I'm just going to, you have anything to add there? Okay. Number 5 is baraka. This one is so fascinating to me. It is to kneel to bless another, to humbly adore another. So when we worship and someone gets down on their knees, they're like, Lord, I love you. They're giving the Lord their baraka. They're kneeling before the Lord. It's to bless the Lord. Psalms 34, 1-2, it says, I will bless, that is the Hebrew word of barakah, the Lord at all times. His praise shall continually be in my mouth. My soul makes its boast, which is halal. That word boast is the halal word we learned about last week, in the Lord. Let the humble hear and be glad. 1 Chronicles 29:20. It says, then David said to all the assembly, bless Barakah, the Lord your God. And all the assembly blessed Barakah, the Lord. So he says, Barakah the Lord, and then they Barakah the Lord. The God of their fathers, and bowed their heads and paid homage to the Lord and to the king. Psalms 95, 6-8 says this, O come, let us worship and bow down. Let us kneel before the Lord our maker. They're kneeling, they're giving, that word kneel is barakah. For he is our God, and we are the people of his pasture and the sheep of his hand. Today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts as the Meribah, as the one day at Massah in the wilderness. So that word barakah I thought was so interesting. I've been reading through Genesis this week, and I got to Abraham and Noah, or Noah then Abraham. I got to Noah, and it says after the flood, the Lord blesses Noah. And so I was like, well, I just read about barakah. So I'm like, what's the Hebrew word for this word blessed? When the Lord blessed Noah. Boop. I have this amazing app called Logos, and I just like, I've had it for forever, but they just made this huge update, and it's changed my life forever. So it'll just pull up the Hebrew word for that word at any word in the Bible. You just click on it, and boom, Hebrew word's right there. And it says the Lord barakahs Noah. And I'm like, how is that possible? And to kneel and bless. And I think about it from the Lord. He's like, I'm getting down at your level to bless you. And just this perspective of like, we kneel before the Lord and he kneels to be with us. Dude, come on, man. And then it's the same thing with Abraham. He goes through everything. The Lord makes a covenant with Abraham. It says that Abraham believed the Lord, and the Lord accounted it as righteousness unto Abraham. That's a whole different sermon that I really want to preach on. But then it says the Lord he blessed Abraham, and that word bless is barakah. Same thing. It's the Lord kneeling down to be with his people, to bless them. Isn't that amazing? Like, we worship him. It's the perfect, like, mirrored picture of us worshiping the Lord and the Lord coming down to be with his people. Like, that's why I think that's why it's so easy to misinterpret, like, worship. It's like, it's so easy to make worship about us, because it's like, well, he gives us so much. He's so generous during worship. And so we come in after a while, start coming in thinking, I want to receive today. It's like, no, you give him your praise first, and then he gives you his communion. Yeah.
That's like, I don't know what I did. Hello?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It's like a father and their child. Mm-hmm. How, you come up to your child and you get down on their level, so they're not like just looking up at you, and you can actually get down and just be like, hey, how's your heart? Are you doing okay? Tell me about your day. It's the communion that worship is meant to be. When we offer our praise to the Lord, he comes down with his barakah and he communes with us like as children. That's like the childlike just glory that's involved in worship, is him just coming down like a good father and being like, I don't want you just looking up at me and just giving me something. I want to commune with you and like look at you eye to eye.
Yeah, so beautiful. The sixth word is zamar. And you guys saw zamar worship today. And Nate was doing it, and Lydia was doing it. I kind of, maybe. It means to strike with fingers the strings of an instrument, to play on a reed, to play upon it, to make music, hence to celebrate with music and singing. So today, Nate was giving the Lord zamar worship. Okay? He was giving the Lord zamar worship. Lydia was giving the Lord zamar worship. I don't know whether the Lord likes me. Yeah. Just giving him my Zamar Cajon, or I don't know, you know what I mean, whatever. But that's when the Lord, when David would say, worship the Lord with stringed instruments. I'll get it. I'm getting ahead of myself. Psalms 21:13, it says, be exalted, O Lord, in your strength. We will sing and praise Zamar, your power. That's that. So that doesn't just mean we shout. It means, no, we're giving you musical worship today. And so like music in worship or music in a church service or whatever, it's not just like, oh, it's really nice. People like to hear music. No, it's because the Lord likes it. Like he likes it. It's not just, oh, we like it. No, he likes it. And I think like, I talked about it last week a little bit. I think we're like redialing into worship in the sense of like, into like the right, almost like a radio where you're like, and there we are. Like we're dialing back into Lord, what do you like? What do you want today? You know, we listen to certain music on certain days, right? To fit the mood, to fit the, you know, to fit what we're desiring that day. And I feel like the Lord is like that, where he's like, oh, I really want Zamar worship today. Or, oh, I really want Baraka worship today. Oh, I want halal. You know what I mean? I think the Lord makes it so that we can't just formulate him. It's relational. Like Lydia's not just like, well, I like when you clean the house. That's enough for me. You know, that's romantic to me. Works of service. Like Lydia wants, some days she wants me to say nice things about her and be like, you're just so pretty and amazing and you keep our kids alive and that's awesome. You know, like there's some days where Lydia might want words of affirmation, and then other days she might be like, bring me a gift, you know, like give me something. And I think the Lord, he makes us, he created this interaction together with us and him to where we can't just be like, well, he only likes it this way. He only wants this one thing, because it depends. It makes us depend on the communion with him to relationally connect and figure out, Lord, what do you want today? Because otherwise we'll just keep giving him the same thing over and over and over, and he's no longer this God that we talk to and commune with. Now he's just a statue that we just bow down to. Is it making sense? Yeah. Like this thing's far more relational than we've made it out to be, and it's important to ask ourselves, why are we doing the things we're doing? So that we can figure out, are we just going through the motions because we just think he wants this every single time, instead of relationally coming to him and be like, how can I love you better today? Because I'll ask Lydia that, like, how can I love you better? Like, what she'll ask me, does that make you feel loved when I do that? You know what I mean? When I get you this gift, does that make you feel loved? Or
he feels more loved when I don't get his gifts and I just let him buy it.
Yeah, there's sometimes she'll like do things around the house, like I can't think of anything right now, but like she put up, stop laughing at me, but she put up like Christmas lights up on our car.
I got on the roof this week and put Christmas lights up.
She'll do things that like should be the man's job or whatever, and I just don't want to do it. And she'll do it, and she'll be like, does it just make you feel so loved that I did it and you didn't have to do it? I'm like, yeah, I feel really loved right now by that. Anyways, I don't know where I'm going with
but
this.
I think this really keeps us out of, it is going through the motions, but it keeps us out of religion. You know, when we feel, I mean, I love Nate and Kate's book, even with the chapter on communion, of religion and going through the motions tells us we only do communion at church. And it's knowing that the Lord wants something from us every day, not just ritually at some times. And I mean, like within our marriage, I was super works of service there for a while. Like, just build me something, fix something, whatever. And something shifted right when he got good at it.
I got so good at it. I was literally like,
6 years in, he finally got it. And then I was like,
switch.
I want this.
She's like, I want you to say nice things to me now. But like it was getting to the
but it keeps it out of, if he would have just, I feel like if things just kept going where I wasn't willing to say something and he just kept fixing things for me, it'd be very easy for a marriage to just become a partnership and not a romance. And so we need to be looking at the Lord in our worship, like, how do you want to be loved? What gift can I offer you today? You created me in your image, so there's tons of things that I can give you. There's tons of ways, creative ways that I could give love to you. What do you want today? What does it look like?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and so this word zamar, to give the Lord worship with singing, with music, I believe that David, he won the Lord's heart over because he was just a shepherd boy out in the field, just zamaring the Lord, just giving him worship, playing his instrument, and just worshiping the Lord. He was giving the Lord zamar, and something I think with the Lord, he was like, that's somebody I'm going to make into a priestly king. Yeah, it's amazing. So we don't need to go anymore. The next word is tehillah, which is not the same thing you put in a margarita. Oh. I was like, I can't wait to say that joke. Thought about it while I was doing it, and I was like, here we go. And I didn't even trip over the delivery. Here we go. Okay. But I ruined it because now I'm explaining it, and now it's ruined. So you're welcome. So
Dad jokes.
7 is tehillah, which is a song of praise and thanksgiving, a loud cry of praise, singing to the Lord to speak positive words about the excellence of another. So this one is kind of funny to me because it's like, it almost feels like they were like, let's come up with a word where we put all of the other words in one. I feel like that's the tehillah word. It's like, it's a song of praise, it's thanksgiving, it's a loud cry of praise, it's singing to the Lord, it's to speak positive words about the excellence of another. I think that's what, for me, separates the tehillah. It's to speak those excellent things. That's like, I feel like one of my favorite things to just declare about the Lord is like, I want to declare all the excellent things about you. There's something in my heart that just gets excited about that. One of those is this, Isaiah 61:3. And this is actually a prophetic word about Jesus and what he will do, because this is where he says, where it says that, I'll get through it. Here we go. Isaiah 61:3, to console those who mourn in Zion, to give them beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, the garment of praise, that garment of praise, which is the word tehillah, for the spirit of heaviness, that they may be called trees of righteousness, the planting of the Lord, that he may be glorified. So this is where it says, the Lord, where Jesus says, later in Matthew, says, the Lord has anointed me to preach the gospel, to do these things. And this is part of the prophetic thing of what the Lord will do in us, which is to console those to mourn in Zion, to give them beauty for ashes and the oil of joy for mourning. The Lord himself, Jesus, he gives us the garment of tehillah. It's a wearing of a song of praise and thanksgiving, and to speak positive words about the excellence of another for the spirit of heaviness. So when you feel heavy, you tehillah the Lord. Oh, I feel heavy, then declare the excellence of who he is. Come on, man. Isn't that good? Like, it's like this stuff's so intertwined that we don't see it. Because, she gone. Okay. That's me, Dave. My wireless pack just died. We just don't see it because we're just seeing the word praise. But we don't see like, oh, this is actually how we should praise when we feel heavy, because the Lord himself gave us the spirit of praise, which is tehillah. Okay, the next verse is Psalm 22:3. But you are holy, enthroned in the praises. Sorry, it says enthroned on the praises, tehillah of Israel. So the Lord, it's not just any other praise word. You know, we sing, you're enthroned upon the praises of your people. He's actually enthroned on tehillah, a song of praise, a song of thanksgiving, a loud cry of praise, singing to the Lord to speak positive words about the excellence of another. That's where he rests. Isn't that amazing? Like, it's not just like, oh, he's enthroned. It's like he's enthroned, sitting on the things, the excellent things we speak about him. That's where he finds rest. Why do you sit down? Because you want rest. Well, he's God. He doesn't need rest. He rested on the seventh day. Do you see that?
Like he actually allows himself to rest. Isn't that amazing? That somebody who can just speak something into existence and, create the enough. Like when is enough enough? Like he's creating the boundaries of life and time and everything like that. That God, that man, Jesus, has enough, it's audacity to me, to rest on our praises. Isn't that incredible? Like it feels crazy because it's like you're so high, you're so above, you're so otherly, but yet you allow yourself to be vulnerable and to just rest on us. There's none like him. Do you want to say anything? There's none like him. And so I wanted to go through these 7 words, and I hope to bring them up frequently because I think it's really important for us to understand our heritage in the Lord. Yeah. Like we serve a Jewish king, right? We do. And he's the root of David, it says. The root of Jesse, the son of David. And this all is just intertwined with that Davidic worship, that Davidic heart of to love the Lord with zeal, with honor, with praise, with bowing down, with shouts of praise, with singing, with, there's so much to it. But if we don't really look into it, we will boil it all down to just, we're just charismatic people. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it's like, we're just a charismatic church. It's just like, no, we're just Christians. This is why we worship him like that, because that's what he likes. That's why David set up a tent, and for day and night and day, for 33 years, they didn't stop this kind of worship. And so it's to understand this is our heritage. This is who we are at the clearing, but as Christians in general. This is what every Christian has been called into, whether they're walking in that or not, or whether they're just a chicken sticking their head out of the door, getting a little bit of his light. Sorry, I'm not calling people chickens. You know what I mean, though? Like it was the story. But that's where we just need to step. We just need to ask ourselves Lord, how can I love you better? How can I worship you better? And then step into that communion with him, to challenge the way that we worship, to challenge what we're comfortable with. Because ultimately, he's coming back for a bride who is laser focused on who he is, who is more captivated by what does the Lord think of me, more than what is the person sitting next to me going to think if I start worshiping that way. That's so important, because when you get to heaven, you're not going to be thinking, I wonder what the 24 elders are going to think if I start dancing right now. You're going to be looking into the eyes of Jesus, and you're just going to be captivated by what does he think right now? What does he think? That's the only person in heaven who you're going to be captivated by. What do they think right now? What are they thinking? And it's just important for us to do that now and not later, because I do believe, this is me, I do believe that a heart yielded to him is the kind of heart where Jesus talks about the parables of the seeds that were sown and the ones that were choked out when difficulty came. I truly believe those hearts that are yielded in their worship are the kinds of hearts where those seeds cannot be choked out. Because there's something that happens to us in worship where we get yielded. We get we come under, where Jesus says, I came to Jerusalem and I wanted to brood over Jerusalem like a hen. We're just chickens. Here we are. Just going to chickens. But that's where it's we come under his wings, and then we're yielded to him. What do you want? Where are we going? If he starts going this way, we're stay under his wings. I should stop preaching. Babe, land this thing.